here. Okay. Cool. All right, I think we're live. Yep. Check. Good over there. Can you hear me, Jesse?
All good.
All right. Well, hey guys, we're live. I'm Antonio Chirumbolo, head of content at newgradoptometry.com, and I'm here with Jesse Khank, and we're going to be talking a little bit about practice management on the webinar tonight, which is proudly hosted by RevolutionEHR. Jesse and I are both RevolutionEHR users in our practices, and it's just a really great product and a fantastic company, so we're excited to be working with them. Jesse Khank is a grad of The Ohio State University who now practices in Des Moines, Iowa. He works in private practice as an owner of 3 locations. So 3 practices. How and why? How did that all start? I mean, was that the dream when you were in school?
Oh, it certainly wasn't the dream. It's kind of one of those things, Matt Geller and I got the chance to kind of talk on one of these, about a year ago, and kind of talk about the craziness of that and how things just kind of fell into place and the management of that. And it's something that we're learning every single day on how to do it and to do it just a little bit better. And I think we're probably going to talk about some of those things going forward here.
Yeah, so you've got to be busy. 3 practices. Are they all within pretty close distance to each other? Are they pretty far apart?
We're in the Des Moines suburbs. To kind of get a feel of what a suburb, what you would imagine the suburbs would be, they're actually fairly well attached to each other. So we're still only talking about a 10-15-minute drive between them. So pretty
Gotcha.
manageable to make sure we hit all those different places.
And do you work at all 3? Do you have associates? How many doctors are working?
So there's 3 owners that we have, and we kind of share those duties. And we do have 1 associate doctor working with us right now. I only work at 2 of those practices. Kind of the main established one in my hometown with Ankeny is where I work the most, and then kind of splitting the time the rest of the way.
Great, yeah. So obviously 3 practices means practice management is going to be a very important undertaking. And so, I mean, I guess a good place to start is, where did you learn all about practice management? Sometimes we're not taught a lot about that in school. I know that, I wasn't personally very confident with practice management when I graduated from optometry school. So where did you start, and what kind of resources were you using or did you use?
One of the nice things, Ohio State did have kind of part of that practice management built into it. And so we did get some I think pretty good training that to setting you up and, buying practices. And I think we even did one time, we had to do like a presentation to bankers to get a loan and kind of going through that. And then they actually like brought them in. So it was a live presentation. But a lot of it's just kind of the real world experience. We were talking earlier, it's just going and doing it and learning and kind of making mistakes. I got books. I did want to own a practice whenever I came out. And so I was prepared for that. I was kind of looking on the shelf up here where my books are. A marketing book, Marketing Your Clinical Practice. There's some other ones that are up there to try and read and get ready for it, but it just never really set in. It wasn't anything I learned until I got the chance to kind of do it. So a lot of it was just sort of learning on the fly.
Yeah, so kind of like a hands-on sort of approach. You just kind of start learning as you go through it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the best way to learn things, for sure. So, you talked about learning, making mistakes. I mean, what were some of the biggest mistakes you made early on when you started first, running these practices and managing them all?
Yeah. I think, so the biggest mistake was definitely in the people and the managing the people. Like you said, you don't have the experience and you weren't trained for it. We didn't go to business school or, learning all those things. We're good at is the clinical part of it. That's what we spend most of our time doing. And so, hiring, firing, managing people, setting goals, I was always really good at, I could hold myself to my own benchmark. This was my standard and I knew I needed to meet it. And, if I didn't feel like I got to that point, being, disappointing myself and striving to do better. And what I was always hard at was transitioning that to other people. So one of the things that we did, we failed. A lot of times we'd hire people, a week or two later, they're out. We weren't getting the right people. And there was something that we were doing where we weren't getting them the support that they needed. And we actually had a consultant come in, business consultant, set up goals for us. So now every quarter, our employees have a goal. It's written down. They get to see it. And it's been a nice transformation for us, because now we're a really goal-based office. Everybody has ones, and that's what we talk about in office meetings is where are we relative to the goals? Where do we want to be going? And so that's made a big difference for us. And again, that was a lot of us failing on our own, not being able to do it and looking for those resources.
So definitely learning from a lot of mistakes. I mean, that can apply to just about anything in life. So you've been in practice. You've been owning these practices for how long now? How long's it been?
Gosh, 2-3 years. I don't even know.
A couple years now, right? So time's flying. I'd imagine that you're obviously still learning things every single day, like you just said. But what are some maybe resources that you currently are using or that you're utilizing, so to speak, to continue to stay on the forefront of things or improve the way you manage and run different aspects of your practice?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of things that we're doing is, trying to, like I said, we kind of have that extra help now that we have to kind of learn about it. On our own, it's trying to get more information better and quicker, and being able to communicate that between different places better and faster. When you are spread out across 3 practices, how do you know what's going on? How do you stay up on it? How do you stay on top of it? And one of the things that you and I were kind of talking before this was kind of data, and how do we collect that? I have some Google Drive files that I'm updating every month to try and give us an idea of where we are, like I said, relative to those goals, relative to our practice expectations, where we're growing toward, that we share, across the owners and across our whole practice. We've also utilized a product called Slack. It's a team communication app to stay on top, and so that we can always be constantly talking to each other, sharing ideas, working on files. If one of the things that we set up was something called a customer success team, and we have a Slack where we're working on files, working on things that we want to send to patients to follow up with them, that we can all kind of do together. So utilizing some of those different technologies to work on those things.
Yeah, I think technology is obviously a really good resource for practice management. And, I also work in a pretty large group practice where we share a lot of information, a lot of data. And, we take that data, we look at it, we analyze it. And so, when you have that many practices, sometimes it can be difficult to look at everything all in one place. So I think, at least for me, one of the maybe overlooked sort of practice management resources has really been the technology we use within the practice. And part of that, honestly, is the electronic health record that we use. As I said earlier, we're both RevolutionEHR users. I think that there's a lot of great tools in RevolutionEHR. When you started looking to buy practices and open practices, I'm sure that was one of the major decisions you had to make. So, was there anything in particular that made you choose RevolutionEHR for your group of practices there?
Yeah, so we did not start on Revolution when I was first hired. I was hired into a single location practice, and kind of talking to what would become, a future partner. We had ideas that we'd like to maybe expand to different locations. And knowing that, we got together and we talked and we said, okay, what's that going to look like? And one of the things, like you said, is, one of the really big important decisions you have to make is then on the health record side. And what we needed was that flexibility, that we could take it to the different locations and be able to move and be portable. And so that's where a cloud-based system really makes a difference, when you are, doing things in different locations, to be able to have that access. And so that was a big driving force for what we were looking for. We were planning on going that way, and Revolution was going to be one of the ways that allowed us to do that.
Yeah, so I think cloud-based systems are definitely the thing of the future here, and even of the present, I guess. I think cloud-based is definitely something that I've seen to be a major benefit within our group of practices as well. Just being able to access anything from anywhere, so long as you have an internet connection, I think has really changed the way we kind of manage, when we manage things, I guess, you know, because you can kind of do it from home, you can do it from anywhere. So another kind of, I guess, little small feature of cloud-based systems is, you know, servers, and, you know, not being dependent on that large, bulky piece of equipment in the office. So I don't know if space is a premium where you're practicing, but it certainly makes a difference when you're talking about small spaces. But in any event, you know, when we talk about data and analyzing data, you know, are there specific reports that you're using to gauge the health of the practice? You know, what reports are you running, I guess, and, you know, how are you analyzing some of those metrics?
Yeah, you talked about service. You like spark something in here. We had one day where we had the servers crashed and the internet went out. It was like an amazing double whammy where everything went down at once. And so we're running Revolution on hotspots on our phone. It was wonderful. I was not stressed at all. The reports that we run, a lot of sales reports. Like I said, I like to. The one thing about Revolution, you can pull that information up. I like to have it in just a different setting or a different way that I can look at it. I was working on this with our old system and then just kind of bring that Revolution data into that. So I like to pull those reports and then I like to kind of give them into my reports that I already have. Now, some of that's changing with some of the things that we talked about, where Revolution's starting to kind of do that on its own, give you a better interface to look at that. And it's new, and so we may change things up, but that's how I do it right now.
Great, yeah. You know, so the one really good thing about Revolution that I found is that it's kind of an all-in-one sort of system. You know, it's an electronic health record. It's obviously a practice management solution, which we're talking about now. It's a scheduler. It does pretty much everything that you could want all in one system. So, you know, even in terms of your optical, you know, are there any particular features of Revolution that you're using in your optical, so to speak, that helps you manage that aspect of your practice? Or, you know, what are your opticians using in there that might make their job a little easier?
I mean, optical reports, I mean, we can run those. I kind of get the feeling, though, from a health record standpoint, that what Revolution would provide in that moment, I think probably could be found in other elements as well. So like I said, I mean, Revolution is great. We use it a lot for those reasons, but I do think some of those reports I've seen when we've used it in other cloud-based systems too. So if people aren't on those, I think they can still run those reports.
Yeah, I know that at one point we talked a little bit about Rev 360, and you know, how are you using that in your practice, and, you know, what exactly is that doing for you guys?
Rev 360 is cool, and it's kind of one of those things that, you know, I talked to friends about it, and if we were running an electronic health records, this would be the things that we'd be looking at. It's the value added that you can put on top of it. I mean, Revolution has a lot of data, and it's data that it's important for the practice to have, but you have to be able to get it. And Revolution, being somebody who connects to it a little bit better, I mean, what we use Revolution 360 for especially is going to be for the MIPS, meaningful use, Rev Aspire, pretty sure is what it's called, that we use. They've got us that along. I mean, it's not something I worry about very much. I mean, we're doing great as far as that goes, but that was all them kind of guiding, coaching along the way, pulling the data for us that we don't have to worry about it. We got enough things that we're busy with to worry about that. So they've helped kind of guide us with that. Other products that are coming out, you know, we had kind of talked about Pulse as being a way to get that information and look at it a little bit better. And again, for practices, that's really important. You know, I do the data myself because that's just what I'm used to. But if you can get that information sooner, have a better idea of where you stand, it's just going to make you all that more, you know, powerful going forward.
Yeah, help you make, I guess, decisions a little faster. Because, you know, I know with well, you have 3 practices. I said I'm part of a 5-group practice, and a lot of times we're looking at practices individually. We're looking at us together as a group. So one pretty cool thing about Pulse, I don't know how much time you've had to spend in it so far, because it's I guess pretty new. I've seen it in the last couple of weeks. Is that you can kind of get a really great snapshot of everything, optical sales, patient encounters, gross revenue, net revenue, all in one graph. And it kind of just, you can see all the practices just lined up next to each other. So you can see where practices are, which particular practice, let's say, is weak, where one is weak, where one is strong. And I'm sure you're probably doing that with your practice with 3 locations, which ones, where are the optical sales weak? And so you can try to figure out better what, it is you could do to try to improve on that. So I think that's one pretty neat thing that I've seen in the Pulse as well, just talking a little bit about that. But, going back to how you said that you didn't really start off with Revolution, I think a lot of fear for many practices is, switching to another system. That it's pretty scary when you think about that. How does that go? I mean, just, this might not be so much practice management related, but, just for my own curiosity, what was that process like? I mean, was it pretty seamless? How did that turn out?
It was almost as stressful as you think, but I mean, we made it. We did it. For myself, I was always really excited about it. I love the interface. It looks so much cleaner and better than anything that we had before. And for me, the ability to be portable was huge, and I was on board. And I don't know, just being either a young OD or somebody who grew up in kind of the technology age, was not intimidated by something that was going to be new. I was really excited about it. I was like getting a new phone or something that you just let me play with it. Let me see what it can do. It was bringing everybody else along the ride too. A lot of, like you said, the older docs who are used to doing it that way aren't super excited about that. And I've had, I want to say, like 4 or 5 colleagues come up to me. They're, the newer ODs, and they're like, they want me to decide what health record system to go to. We've either never done before, or we want to grow and do something different. And it's really going to be on the new grad to take that decision on. They're going to look for us as the experts. Like I kind of mentioned in the article, by the time I graduated, I had done 4 or 5 different health record systems. And you walk into your externship or your internship, and they say, hey, here's our new system. You get a day or 2 to figure it out, and then you need to be up to speed. And so I think for us, that intimidation won't be there because we're used to that experience. But we need to know what else is out there, because we're going to be the experts that people look to make those decisions, just like I was, to teach everybody how to use it. So I needed to know it better front to back than anybody else did to kind of work them through that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, when I first started in our group offices there, we actually already had RevolutionEHR. So I had never used it before. But I think adaptability is a really important, how long is it going to take for you to learn the system? And, I know that for me personally, after one day, I pretty much had all the essentials anyway mastered. Yeah. Eventually I, had to learn how to run some reports and, do some other more in-depth things. But, that came with time, and, with the support team that Rev has, I mean, that was simple. I mean, they've got a great support team. I don't know if you've ever personally called on their support or not.
A little bit. Did you watch those videos too? I like these YouTube videos, and I swear, like, nobody watches them. I'm like, these are awesome.
Yeah, they're so helpful. A lot of resources out there, Facebook group, and a lot of webinars actually. So yeah, I don't know if you ever tuned into any of those, but those are super helpful as well. So it's really like, a tech company, an EHR tech company. I mean, it's everything all in one, which makes it really awesome to use, at least in terms of running a practice and, seeing patients. I mean, it's just nice, because I've used other systems before where it was kind of like you had a separate application for scheduling patients. you had another application for the optical, you had another application for the patient. So it was like toggling back and forth between 3 different windows. I mean, you kind of got lost in the shuffle. So, I know that's just, a major benefit of having an all-in-one system is just efficiency.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you see that in your practice as well, but another important thing that I think is necessary now with you touched on this before with MACRA and MIPS and PQRS and all those other kind of reporting necessities that we're have to do at this point. Patient communication with other healthcare providers, that's extremely important, especially for practices. I mean, do you see a lot of medical at your practices? Do you do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, we do a lot of medicals, and there's a large kind of ophthalmology practice in our neighborhood that we work a lot with. And so, like you said, the ability to kind of send that information. Do you have Rev Direct where you can send that back and forth?
I do.
Yeah.
So extremely helpful. We're obviously, primary care providers are always looking for, letters and connecting with other healthcare professionals is almost a necessity now with medical management. So, I mean, is there anything in particular that, you found, anything in particular that you do? What are you utilizing to do that?
Well, like you said, I mean, from the MIPS standpoint, we want to make sure that we make that contact, especially on referrals. Start that handoff. I forget all the terminology that all the things you're supposed to be doing for that. But just making sure we send that transitional care document so that they have it. But I like sending, if I'm sending them for something right now, I want to send that photo that OCT that I took, attach that along with it so they can see that. On a couple of patients, just being able to kind of talk back and forth and, how is this going for you? What did you see? What do you need on my end? What am I going to send you? That communication is there. And again, this is one way to be able to do it.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that you kind of mentioned before, just in terms of, we keep talking about macro, MIPS, et cetera, but, you kind of said like, it's kind of neat that you just kind of Revolution took care of it. You didn't have to really worry about it too much. And I think that's really an underestimated source of practice management assistance is, there's a lot of things that I feel that I've found Revolution kind of do automatically for us as things have changed in the profession that you almost kind of take for granted. I know when ICD-10 was coming out, there was like it's like the sky was falling, oh my gosh, what do you do? And people were taking courses, and I can't tell you how many people were saying, oh, you go into that CE on ICD-10, you're taking that training, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? And I was kind of like, what's the big deal? I don't get it, because I showed up, on Doomsday, and I opened up a patient encounter and all the codes were there. It was just auto conversion,
Yeah, that little
code. Exactly. So I think like that's a huge overlooked benefit sometimes is, what's the AHR, what's your HR doing for you behind the scenes, so to speak. I found that extremely helpful. So just so, all the viewers know, you can always ask any questions on the live feed. We're checking that out. So, any questions, don't hesitate to comment, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll definitely answer them the best that we can. But I know moments earlier you talked a little bit about sending an OCT image, right? Or, a photo, etc. So, one great benefit of Revolution that I found is integrations, right? So there's a lot of different software, hardware integrations that can be used throughout just not only seeing patients, but even in practice management. And, which ones are you using? Do you use any hardware, software integrations at your offices?
We do. So especially in our Altoona location, one of the things that we have is the Rev integrator for images. So patient walks in, they're going to get their auto refraction topography. It's going to then send to the laptop. The laptop will pop up you save it to this file, and that file will automatically register. And so there's going to be a pop-up that shows up, and it said, hey, log into your Revolution account and click which patient you want this attached to. It then sends it right into the record, and it sends it into the refraction tab. That's where I want to see it. So by the time I get to the refraction and I'm going through that, I click a little button on the screen right next to it, and it pops up, and I can see the topo, and I can see the AR and have an idea where I want to take it. So that's the integration that I like the best so far.
Right. Yeah. You know, at our practice, we use, you know, we have some hardware integrations, but a little bit more on, I guess, more software integrations. We do utilize Solution Reach in our practice, which is kind of like a patient communication sort of tool. I don't know if you're using anything like that, Jesse, but it's kind of extremely helpful because what it does is it communicates with our patients. So, you know, it will send text reminders, email reminders, and it just integrates seamlessly into our scheduler, which integrates right into the, as you know, it's all in one. So it's right there. You know, you see the schedule, you see the encounter, and it will actually allow patients to confirm, or, you know, their appointments directly. So you can open up the schedule and you can see who's confirmed, who's not confirmed, and, you know, it makes things much easier because it eliminates the need to have to go into Solution Reach separately. You know, it's just right there in Revolution. So once again, you know, all in one. I found that extremely helpful. I don't know if you use any of those kind of you know, any other software integrations or anything like that, but we also use RxNT. Using anything like that?
Yep, I almost want to say RxNT, like, seems like it comes with it. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
That was the natural, like, handoff for the prescribing electronically. We use Solution Reach as well, but did you have a chance to experience with Rev Connect, which is kind of Rev's version of that? And
you know, I've experimented a little bit with it. You know, at present time, we kind of are, we've kind of had both, because we had Solution Reach, we've had it. So, you know, with Rev Connect, I've got a little bit of experience with it. I haven't used it much yet. So, you know, what are your thoughts on Rev Connect? I mean, how much have you used it in your practice so far?
well, we've got the chance to kind of experience all of them. We started with Demand Force, which worked well when it was one location, and then had a hard time stripping out that data for the multiple locations. So Solution Reach does that better, and Solution Reach does more than Rev Connect does. But what I liked was just the simplicity of Rev Connect. It was actually almost a little bit nicer because it could do a little less. Solution Reach, I think, sometimes is a little overbearing for patients, and they get a little overloaded or overwhelmed by some of the notifications. And so by almost doing less, Rev Connect seemed to fix that. The trouble is, I mean, you get so steeped into this is the one that we use that it really, like you said, it's hard to kind of turn away from that. And so we're still using Solution Reach now.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you were starting out.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You know, like I said, we've experimented a little bit, but like we're so entwined in Solution Reach right now that it's kind of like we've got a lot of information in there. We've created newsletters, and, you know, so it's still a great, you know, integrated tool to have. It's good that you have that option, but
what do you do for reviews, especially with Solution Reach, where it kind of gets attached to Solution Reach?
You know what it is that one thing that we did at our practice was we created a lot of newsletters. And what we do is, you know, we kind of call upon the newsletters throughout the year. So end of year, you know, FSA dollars. I did some work when I was just starting out. I had a lot of free time on my hands. So, you know, my schedule wasn't very full. Yeah. And so I was building a lot of these newsletters, and, you know, so I would, you know, I would basically target patients maybe who, you know, certain age groups, so to speak, who might want to know a little bit more about macular degeneration. So, hey, you know, macular degeneration is this, you know, this is why it's important to get your eyes examined annually, you know, stop in for XYZ, talk about different types of preventative measures, and, you know, just always a way to communicate with patients. So, you know, we have a lot of newsletters that I've created in there that we use consistently, and, you know, a lot of reviews too. So one thing that, you know, I'm sure that you probably have to deal with are reviews. So, you know, so how do you handle reviews? Are you big into social media at your practices? Do you do a lot of that stuff, or?
It's always a work in progress. I mean, I tried to take it over early, and then, like you said, I mean, we just run out of time, and you just can't do it as well. And if you're not giving it your full effort, it's not doing anything for you. We have a couple of people who have kind of taken it on now, and so I'm excited to see where they can take it. And I think they've done a great job for us to begin with, trying to get more of that kind of social engagement. And I think we have some ideas that we'd like to explore, but I can't say of anything concrete there. Reviews are obviously really important, and like I said, the one thing that kind of frustrates me about Solution Reach is that they're going to start to hold on to those for you. So, I mean, we've done some SEO search engine optimization to try and bump those up. So if you search for us, you'll at least see that, but you have to go into the website to do it, you know, and I want them to be on Facebook. I want them to be on Google to do that. We've had just a few bad reviews. When they're in Solution Reach or in demand force, it's a good opportunity to reach out and communicate with the patient, say, hey, what can we do? What can we do better? When it's in a more focused place, you certainly want to do that. But you have to also we need all those other reviews to make up for it. You know, I don't think anybody expects everybody's, you know, a 5-star review. You're always a little suspicious if you see, you know, 5.0 everywhere. But you got to be able to bury those other ones that are there. And we've tried to talk to some people and say, hey, if we get this resolved for you, is there a chance you could just, you know, help us with that review that's on there, especially as a new practice? You know, that's a lot of what people see. If you could, you know, if we get this resolved the way that you want, would you consider maybe changing that?
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people look to social media as a driver for practice growth. So, you know, obviously important in practice management is how to grow your practice. You know, that's critical, mission critical, really, for obvious reasons. But, you know, what are some practice management tools or methods that you've used to really grow your practices? I mean, were your practices existing practices that you bought, or were they cold starts? I mean,
they were both.
Okay.
We've come at it from both ways. The main practice in Ankeny has been there for a while, 30 plus years, and it had a lot of things kind of in place for us to kind of utilize. And you kind of mentioned growth, and we had a little discussion earlier. One of the big drivers of that growth is just returns. It's getting the patient back and pre-appointing. And so that was something that Ankeny patients, or our main practice, was used to. And so we just kind of continued that along. And it was funny, you know, as some people kind of fell through the cracks. And if they did, they told us and they let us know, hey, what happened? I didn't have an appointment set up. Like, oh, okay. And a lot of that had to do with our switching over from the systems. You know, have everybody pre-appoint the old ones, and we didn't get them caught up, all of them caught up into the new one. So now that we've gotten them established, it's okay, we got the new system now, we got you, we won't lose you again. So they're used to it. And that's a really nice thing about doing it for a while. The one practice that we bought that had an established practice, that's one of the things that we kind of are bringing into it and just getting kind of patients into it. And then the new patients are the newer locations. It's a totally new idea to them. And so it's just kind of coaching and learning that, yeah, we want to see every year and keep an eye on how things are going. And these are the reasons why. And so some of that's just the education now.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that pre-appoints, I mean, when I first started out, I mean, like I kind of mentioned before, there were days when I would walk in and have 5 on the schedule for a whole day. And, you know, that was like year 1. And I used to go there and I used to think, man, you know, this is how can I keep going like this? And, you know, with some patience and, you know, with pre-appointing, I found that in year 2, all of a sudden, you know, those 5 patient days were all of a sudden 10 patient days. And I was like, oh, you know, oh, cool. These guys are from last year, you know, and, oh, look, I got a few more. And, you know, now in year 5, it's like, well, you know, instead of walking into a schedule of 5 patients, I walk into a schedule of 35 patients. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all these people here? So I found that, just personally, pre-appointing is definitely a great tool to use just to keep your practice growing. And, I don't know about you, but I think we've done all kinds of different types of marketing. We've done print, electronic. You could tell me what you've done, if as well. But I think the biggest driver of practice growth has really been word of mouth. And when I started working out and I was seeing those 5 patients, one thing I had a lot of was time. So I would just give patients the absolute best exam I could possibly give. And, every single test that we learned in optometry school, I was performing. And, by the end, they were just like, man, that was the most thorough exam I've ever had. And, they went on to tell their wife or their sons or their nieces, their nephews, etc. And, slowly you just start getting this wave of new patients coming in, and that grows, and that just keeps growing. So I think, just in terms of our practices, just word of mouth has been really, really big. I don't know if you've dabbled a little bit in electronic marketing or print marketing. I mean, what are your thoughts? What are your take on that?
So in the Des Moines metro market, I'm a part of Vision Source, and so we have gotten together as a collective group to start to explore some of those options. So we have a TV commercial that kind of went around. We've done the internet part of it. Like you said, we've done radio as well. And like you said, the return, you're always just a little underwhelmed by. And we still want to do it as new and getting our, some of it's just brand. It's, just trying to create your brand more than it is awareness or more than it is drive. But I think the take home, I went to a practice seminar, and one of the guys said, marketing is the cost of being unexceptional. That's what you have to pay to get people in the door instead of that. And there's a part of it that's maybe not true, like I said, because there's those other elements to it, but a lot of it is. And like you said, if you're doing an exceptional job for people and they're telling people, that's the best way to get people into your door, and it's better than any of those other options, multiples.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we found in our practice to be the case, is just do an exceptional job, do the best you can, and people will tell other people. People might stray that one year, they might try somewhere else, but they'll come back. And that's always one thing, is that there's never a shortage of competition. So just with other practices in the area, with disruptive technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one way to differentiate yourself is to do things that are maybe different. So, I mean, I don't know if there's anything in particular that you guys do in your practices that you could say is a little different. I think technology is a big one. So, being able to have a patient in your room and show them that OCT image right in their record, say, hey, this is right from the other room. You just, you're here now. Here's your results. Let's look at them together. I think that creates a little bit of a wow factor. We have a lot of, I'm fortunate enough to practice in a pretty progressive, seeing a lot of medical cases. So I have a lot of all the cool gadgets and gizmos, the OCT, the Optos, the Octopus field matrix, and all the cool gadgets, the eye care, so that is also a way to differentiate yourself, I guess, from other sources of competition. So I mean, I don't know if there's something in particular you guys are doing, or if you're focusing efforts on anything in particular or not.
I mean, we have basically almost everything that you kind of described there. So we have an electronic refracting system as well. But then, like you mentioned, you have basically almost all the same tools that we have here. You'll see a commercial for lens crafters talking about their electronic refracting system and how wonderful that is, and it's great, and I love using it. But some of it, like you said, is now just kind of keeping up with the Joneses. It's almost like kind of the cost of playing right now is all that infrastructure that you have to buy. again, it's what you do with that that's going to be your differentiator. It's that experience, and putting it all in, one bucket, like you said, where you can have the testing equipment, but then you're going to explain it in an exceptional way and show them everything. Showing is so much more important than telling. You support your argument just a little bit better whenever you can show that image to them.
Yeah, right. I mean, one thing I think that, we're talking a lot about growth here, how to grow your practices, but I think one important thing when you're making practice decisions is to choose different types of technologies. EHR, obviously one of them, that has the ability to grow along with your practice. So, I don't know if you've seen that as your practice has grown over the years. I don't know how long you've been using Revolution, but I've been using it for probably now close to 3 years now. I want to say 3 years or so. And one thing I've seen is just year after year, not even year after year, but month after month, there's always something coming out new. There's always, okay, hey, yeah, we heard about macro MIPS. Hey, we got your back. So that's one thing that's been really good for us in our practices is being able to rely on, the decisions we've made in the past to kind of keep supporting us going forward.
Have you been to the review meetings in Dallas?
You know what? I actually have not. Have you?
I have, and so that's probably the coolest thing when you kind of talk about Revolution and how progressive and changing, cutting edge they are. Is, I mean, you walk in the first day, they give you these like ping pong balls, and they're like, okay, here's all the things that we think we can do for you. You vote on it. You tell us which one is actually important, and we're going to work on it. And what we're going to do is by the time you leave this meeting in a day or two, we're going to build one of them for you and show it. So that's when you're talking about them building it. I mean, they can do it fast, and they're listening to you. It's your votes that matter and your feedback that matters.
Yeah, I think just using that as an example of customer support, which has so many parallels to what we do as well. I remember there was an update that came out. I don't know when it was. It might have been a year or two ago now, but there was a particular way the schedule was presented in Rev, and I remember going into the office the one morning, and I logged in. I opened up the schedule. I'm like, what happened? What is this? Like this is awful. Like what did they do? And I sent an email, I sent a message in, and I know a lot of people sent messages in. I don't know, it must have been maybe less than 1 week. I don't know, it might have even been in a couple days. They said, hey, don't worry, we're working on a fix. We're gonna get this, we're gonna redesign it. And they totally did it. Yeah. Within that 1 week period, just listening to their customers and really valuing our input, our feedback, and obviously that draws parallels with being a practice owner, customer support. So I think that's critical to practice success. I mean, I can't tell you how many things we do to just create an experience, I guess, in our practice. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, for me, it's just a mindset that I have that I was talking to my text about. You have to care and you have to mean it, and if you do, I think that comes through. And like I said, trying to really go above and beyond, or really bring that great experience. And then, like you said, the hard thing is now, whenever your time gets cut, how are you going to make that exceptional experience, but in a shorter amount of time? Because you have to see somebody again in 5 minutes. You got two people, two different patients that are already sitting in a room waiting for you. And part of that exceptional experience is not making them wait too long, because nobody has time. That includes your patients. And so being really efficient, trying to get through it, but trying to also give them the time that they need. It's kind of the balance that we have going forward is how we're going to manage that.
Yeah, and I think efficiency is probably the key word there. Being efficient, and I just know that as having an all-in-one system that does a little bit of everything for you has definitely created some efficiencies in our practices. Being able to pull up with the integrations, images directly in the exam room, having everything already there, the schedule's there, the patient's there. So you just, you walk in, and it's almost more of a conversation as to, hey, Mrs. Jones, how have you been? Tell me, what's going on with Johnny? How's your husband doing? And you kind of have more of a conversation with them while you pepper in a little bit of, optometry or eye care into it. And, you kind of work through the exam, but you don't even realize you're doing an exam.
Yeah.
And then, when they leave, it's just more of like hey, it was nice seeing you. Can't wait to see you again next year. And, oh, by the way, your eyes are, they're okay. So, I found that is probably the best practice management pearl that I could personally give is just do the best job that you possibly can with your patients. Just treat them. And I even use this line a lot. I'll never forget, when it comes to making decisions and treating patients and managing them, I always tell them, Mrs. Jones, if you were my mother, this is what I would do. This is what I would tell you to do. And I think they really appreciate that, just showing that you really care. And I think, if you're looking to grow your practice, if you're looking to differentiate yourself, that's really what you got to do. You have to create the experience, because let's face it, an online web application or an iPhone app is not going to create a bond with a patient. It's not going to tell a story. It's not going to do anything. It's probably not going to be that accurate either. But that's probably the best practice management pearl I think I can leave our viewers with right now. I don't know if you have one to share personally that you've kind of picked up on over these last couple of years as a practice owner.
And I would actually just jump on what you were saying right there. So again, that's a little practice seminar that I went to. One of the things they said was, it was a practice seminar, but they were coming at it from a different angle. It was a motivational speaker, but somebody who had experience he owned a bunch of salons, and that's how he kind of became this motivational business speaker. And he goes, one of the things that you guys don't realize is you have an advantage over me. You have an advantage of most people in business, is that you have a record that follows that person around. You know everything about them. And if you don't, that's on you. You can type everything that you need to. Like you said, you want to have that great conversation with somebody, but you want to remember it going forward. What do we talk about? Write it in the chart. You can type it in the chart. You can have it right there. So after almost every patient encounter that I have, when you get to the assessment and plan part of it, so when you get to the assessment, there's that little box underneath of it for notes. I will often have a paragraph or a few sentences, but definitely something that says, these are the things we talked about. So next year when they come in, that's where I go first. I'm looking, what did I write for the notes? And then I can say, hey, what? We talked about this thing last time. It wasn't me pulling it from just memory. I don't have that great of a memory. I'm pulling it from the chart, but it's going to continue the conversation. And like you said, you can touch on those things and you do care, you just can't remember, but this is what helps facilitate that, so you can keep that going forward. So you have a chart, use it. Yeah, absolutely. That's the comment section for our Rev users, down the comment box or the alert box. You could set banners. And so I definitely make good use of those as well. So I think we're just about out of time now. So, it's been fun chatting with you. And, so I think a good take home message here is that, competition's everywhere. Practice management isn't something that really you kind of are, it's just something that you acquire over time. You got to make mistakes. Look for resources for help. Look to things that you're already using within your practice, I think, for help, your EHR, and just any tools that you utilize. Really, just look at what you're using and look to make sure that they're creating an exceptional experience for your patients, because that's, I think, how we're going to really, that's how I think the private practitioner is going to stand out against, all these outward forces. So I don't think we have any other questions. So if you have any last thoughts, Jesse, it's him now. Great getting to talk. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll do this again soon sometime. And thanks for listening.